Hi guys, welcome back to Hither Green TMD in O Gauge. So this is part 5 of the Turbot weathering project. We're going to do maybe a bit of dry brushing and a bit of stippling to create some rust effects, some fading effects, and maybe apply some weathering powders to the doors and the inside. We'll see how we go, we give it a go, and we'll see how this camera goes. It worked quite nicely doing the wider angle shots on the layout, and we'll see how good it is doing close-up on the workbench type videos. So without further ado, let's get to the workbench and get these wagon doors all buttoned up hopefully today. Okay, here we are back on the workbench and the doors are all stripped off. Now I've mixed them up, unfortunately, that was a mistake, but there we go. I'm going to be fiddling around with these three numbers of Humbrol paints, 70, 113 and 160, and that is basically all we're going to use for this next bit. The doors are off, we're going to stipple them, we're going to use a sponge, plastic tray to decant the paint onto, brush, because I'm going to paint the edges of the frame here in a nice dark rusty brown colour. I'll use the 160 for that, and a bit of other stuff, tissue, whatever that comes to hand that is just living around in everybody's house. Quite simple. So first I'm going to start mixing the 160 and painting along the edge rails of the chassis. Okay, so I've added and mixed up my dark brown, and I'm just going to do the edge rails along here just to make them darker than the wood. And along the edge of the side rails. Because the paint would get marked as the doors get dragged out and everything gets washed out and all the dirt runs under the doors. So this bit will be sort of a rusty coloured rather than a black. And I'll do the same on the other side too. So that just looks darker around the edges and on the side rails. And I shall repeat it for this one. Having moved the wagon out of the way and sorting the doors back out into their respective wagons so we can make sure we weather each one consistently, I'm going to, using some matte white, I'm going to do a little bit of dry brushing, and it's quite simple, straightforward. If I can get the lid off, screwdriver, pop the lid. I'm not even going to bother stirring, I'm going to use what is on the lid here. If I just move these out of the way, move these out of the way, so you've got that here. I have a bit of tissue paper. I'm going to get this big coarse brush that I have, quite a coursing, and I'm just going to load up the end of the brush with a little bit and wipe it off, pretty much everything off, so that I can now just dry brush, highlights the edges and just put some little white streaks on. Can you see that there? I'll just bring that up. That's all it does. Just add some fading and some lines. And I'm now going to go and do that with the rest of the doors on both wagons. So it just takes off the blackness off the panel. Just clean the brush off so there's literally pretty much nothing on there. And on vertical strokes up and down the body. And it fades them out. And this is dry brushing. So you can see the difference between the two halves of the door. If I just bring that into focus, there we go. So you can just see there's how it highlights and fades out the paint a little bit. And the last one for this wagon. And now I'll do, so you should be able to see if I just adjust the camera here. Bear with me. The big difference that little bit of dry brushing has made between the two. And there we go, that's all 6 doors done for each wagon. They don't have to match, they can all be varied. And what I'm going to do now is, on the end of the wagons, repeat the process. brush, and we'll just take a bit off. And carry on just rubbing it in. And a nice stiff brush is best for this stippling job. You can do it on the top, on the bottom, and it just highlights some edges. So I shall now carry on with the rest of this wagon. What we're also going to do, the same as we did on the doors, dry brush in white the underframe of the wagon, just to highlight and pick out the edges and the detail, and fade it back from black a little bit. And this should be more visible in the photographs in a bit. So what we're going to do now is go back to the doors, which we've got all parts up here ready, and we're going to stick sort of stipple, but we're going to use a bit of crispy sponge. So I'm going to use a bit of brown number 70. And I'm going to pour that a little bit onto the plastic lid. Because I've already stirred it. I'll just spread it around a bit. It's not too thick. And then I'm going to get the sponge, find a nice bit that I quite like. I'm going to go for this slight furry side here. We're just going to dip it in there, a bit of paint on, dab it off of there, because we don't want too much. And then we're just going to gently stipple on a couple of parts of the door. It'll look quite harsh to start with, but what we will be doing is blending it all in with the airbrush later on. And you can also just streak it down. I'm going to use a finger. And it's all good. So just literally as much or as little as you like on the wagon doors. They got very battered. So you can, I'm going to dab this one. Can do a little bit on top of the doors as well, along the top edge, so they blend a bit. Just along the top edge. What I might do with this one is sort of smear it a bit more, a couple of smears and some, because I'm going to make this one slightly more beaten up, so I'm going to put a couple of little wipes down the door and then dry stipple it, and we load a bit more paint on, and again along the top edge of the door. So they're all varied. Little wipe and stipple. Wipe and stipple. And some doors will be worse than others. Some get repaired and replaced. But I'm just going to go for a match. A matching set. All the doors are in similar condition on each wagon. And we shall call that it for this video. We've faded, we've stippled, so what is left is some airbrushing. So there we have the doors weathered. So all that's going to be left to do on this tomorrow will be stippling the inside of the wagon on the floor and the ends. And then once that is all done and even out, a quick blow over with the airbrush in some frame dirt, and we'll be pretty much ready for varnish and done. So I'll get a couple of photographs of this and stick them on the end, and you can have a quick closer look, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next video. Fingers crossed. Catch you later.